What's going on, everybody? It's Podcast 1558. We're breaking down another position group. Let's go. All right, what's going on, everyone? This is Billy Truelove, Podcast 1558. I got Matt Bird with me today. We don't have Justin Herrera. We will get this done with the two of us. Today we are talking defensive line position group. We broke down the wide receiver group going into 2021 a couple weeks ago. This position group, which it seems, on paper, it seems pretty straightforward, but I believe it has a lot of question marks, a lot of hope that we're putting into seeing some guys take another step in. Just we don't really know what's going to happen. Matt, what you and I had discussed, we're looking at really about a group of about 10 guys or so that will a combination of make the team, start on a consistent basis, but we know at the end of the day there's going to be four guys on the field that will play on this D line every snap, and one of them is the highest paid player on the team this season. That's Frank Clark. Don't have to go too into all of his shenanigans right now, but we can say we're fairly confident that he's definitely going to be there week one. He doesn't have court until week 5 or so. I think the Monday after that, week 5. And I don't think he's going to go to court then anyway, so he should be on the field at $25.8 million cap hit. Which, again, if he does get suspended, we can get 18.5 of that back. But I just don't think it does anything for us to get that type of money back at week 6. Depending on what's going on with the team and depending on what's going on around the league with defensive ends, maybe we entertain releasing him mid-season. But that's not something you see Super Bowl contending teams do on a regular basis. Just release star defensive ends while they're trying to make a run for the Super Bowl. But we'll see. So we obviously expect Frank Clark to be on the field. Chris Jones at $8.5 million. Obviously, we have there's no question mark around Chris Jones for us. We know what he's going to do. He is one of the most consistent players on that line. And maybe the second best defensive tackle in all of football. It sounds like a biased thing to say, but I don't think it's that. I don't think it's just Chiefs fans that think that. Is that where you have? Does this Chris Jones kind of stand in that regard to you as well behind Aaron Donald?
Absolutely. Yep. I would say he's the second best D lineman in football.
Yeah, and I think that it's kind of I don't think the third is the third best defensive tackle, which I couldn't even tell you who I think the third best defensive tackle is right now. There's a couple of guys that come to mind, but I don't think that they are necessary. I think there's a drop between 2 and 3 in the league when it comes to defensive tackles. We know where we're going to get there, and we're possibly going to see a new wrinkle with Chris Jones this year. As you guys have been hearing, the Chiefs are wanting to try to push him outside and see what he can do with some of these one-on-one matchups with a right tackle or a left tackle, which I think he could win quite a bit of that. But where do you stand? I don't think I've asked you directly in the past couple of weeks. Where do you stand on him playing outside?
I love it. I want to see him outside as much as possible. I think he's going to be a guy who can get that push and get to the quarterback. And we may not need that level of production from Frank Clark if Jones is playing on the outside.
I hear you. That's I guess I'm not shocked to hear you say that. It seems like a lot of people have been excited to hear this or think that there could be some pros to it. I am on the other side of that, and I just don't want it to happen, really. And I guess unless it's a situational thing, you've invested in Jaron Reed. He's got a cap hit of $5.5 million this year, and I think he'll be worth every cent as long as he can stay on the field. And there's never been another defensive tackle of Jaron Reed's caliber playing next to Chris Jones. And I hope we get to see both. Maybe Jaron Reed is good enough to handle his shit on his own in the middle of that line. And Chris Jones can play outside. And that would be best case scenario. Obviously, that is absolute best case scenario is that Chris Jones and Frank Clark can play on the edge and absolutely dominate because Jaron Reed gets a good push. Can he get a Chris Jones push? No, he can't. Or we wouldn't be having this conversation of how highly regarded Chris Jones is playing defensive tackle. And that is kind of where it gets murky to me. Frank Clark, Chris Jones, Jaron Reed. Those are the no question mark guys. And Jaron Reed hasn't even played a snap for us. After that, it is just a mixed bag. Derek Nottie, I think Derek Nottie can do some things. I think he's a good run stopper. He's getting hit for $2.4 million towards the cap this year. Not a not a huge number. Colin Saunders, who before I say anything about Colin Saunders, Matt, tell me what you think about Colin Saunders.
I mean, I don't think we've seen enough of Colin Saunders to have an opinion about him. The athleticism is definitely there. He's somebody who could contribute, I think, when given the opportunity.
He had his arm in what appeared to be an entire body bag most of the season last year on the sidelines. I'm not even sure if it's broken in 100 places or what he did to the thing, but it didn't look good. And you're right, we haven't seen much from him. But my goodness, like they really oversold us to him. I think oversold him to us that he could be. I mean, I could be not remembering this clearly, but I'm pretty sure there were Chris Jones comparisons that he was going to,
Yep.
he could possibly play that, kind of have that kind of role. And it's like, okay, well, it's so much harder to take that when you got a guy that went to a smaller school and things like that. We'll see. Him and Derek Nottie are kind of the same guy to me. Derek Nottie is maybe not as flashy and doesn't have quite the ceiling. And the Colin Saunders ceiling is just what we've been told it is. We haven't seen him get there.
Yeah.
We've seen Frank get to his ceiling. We've watched them get to that ceiling. It's still just a legend that Colin Saunders has this ceiling. We'll see. Derek Nottie is what he is. I think he's a consistent dude that can play 3 downs and help stop the run and maybe be exactly what Jaron Reed needs next to him. But we're talking about that's on a line that could require moving pieces. There's only a couple that we have right now. You keep going down the list. Deshaun Wharton, I was a huge fan of Deshaun Wharton last year. I know he's not a Pro Bowl player yet, or anything like that, but I thought that when he got the opportunity, he made the most of it. 14 solo tackles last year, 27 that he was involved in. And 4 tackles for loss. He got 4 quarterback hits, and we're talking about a guy that is this year going to have a salary cap hit of $781,000, the lowest of anyone on that D-line this year. He is getting paid the least. That includes Joshua Kando, the rookie from Florida State. How'd you feel about Wharton? Because he made a fan out of me this year.
I loved Wharton. I do want to see more of him this year, and I think we will, because I think the D line, that fourth spot, like you said, I think you're going to see a lot of rotational. I liked Mike Dana a lot also, so I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more from him as well, and I think you'll see kind of a combination of Derek Nottie, Mike Dana, and then Wharton as well, kind of rotating that fourth spot.
Yeah, I think you're right. Dana, another guy, very similar production, 6 quarterback hits, 16 solo tackles, and 2.5 sacks. Dana was a very refreshing surprise to have out of a guy that we were not expecting to get anything out of. I think I think he could be good. I'm very excited to see him, and I am, the other person, the other player on this team that I'm just crossing my fingers on is Joshua Kaindoh. Maybe this is the guy, but maybe not. But at least we know we don't expect someone like Mike Dana to just become this season a absolute monster premier defensive end in the league that is going to eventually require $100 million contract. Probably not going to happen. But maybe Joshua Kaindoh can be that guy. We haven't seen it yet. So we still have that unknown has a lot of upside to it. The another defensive end on this team that I was very excited about through most, while I played last year was Taco. I think Taco Carlton can be good. He just didn't play much. He got hurt. I think he played 7 games last year. In those 7 games, he had 2 sacks, 4 quarterback hits, 4 tackles. It's not a ton of production, but he did get co-signed. Frank Clark believes that guy can be for real, and I mean he was drafted that way as well. That a lot of people thought Taco was going to be good. So hopefully, if he can stay healthy, God, I'm going through this position group. There's so much more hopefullys. Hopefully this happens.
Right.
When we were talking wide receivers, there's no hopefullys. It's you guys better get what you can because Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are going to eat. And that's it. There's no question marks there. We have question marks with the highest paid player on the team this year. In this position group, Frank Clark at $25.8 million. The only thing that we can hang our hat on is in the postseason, he turned it up the year we won the Super Bowl. And we kind of we guarded him through all of last year with that sentiment that when we get to the postseason, he's going to turn it on. And, well, we got embarrassed in the Super Bowl. So, and I think everyone can wear some of that, including someone making as much money as Frank Clark.
Right.
Because Tom Brady didn't have to move in that game.
Right.
At all. So that goes on Frank, that goes on Chris Jones. This position group is very, very top heavy with money. We're talking a little over $46 million. That's not including the $2 million signing bonus Alex Okafor got. I don't know what his true salary cap hit is going to be. Probably not that much if they gave him $2 million signing bonus. I'm sure he'll be getting somewhere in that Joshua Kaindoh, Deshaun Wharton, $700,000-$800,000 this year. It won't be much. And he's another guy, older player. Maybe he can help. He's one of those guys that can have a good game from time to time, but he isn't someone that an offense is circling when they're getting the plan together. They're saying, "Hey, watch Alex Okafor." They're just not. All right, well then, Matt, let me pivot here. Then in the offseason, it was no secret the Chiefs were actively looking at adding another player, another piece to this defense. I do not consider Alex Okafor as that. He filled in that whatever need the Chiefs thought we had. He's been on the team before, so I just think that's a familiar guy. Do you think Brett Veach is still looking to add to this group?
I think he is probably at least one more player. It won't be Chandler Jones though, because they clearly can't afford him. I think it could be somebody like
Yeah.
Justin Houston, maybe Oliver Vernon, who's still out there coming off
Yeah.
an Achilles injury. So he'd probably come a little bit on the cheaper side.
Either one of those names, I would feel good about getting, especially a veteran in here. Not saying Okafor isn't. I know Okafor is, but I would like. I still think you can get more out of someone like Justin Houston,
Yeah.
um, or Vernon, like you said. Uh, yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think they Chandler Jones, as you mentioned, word is he does want to get traded. Um, and the Cardinals are in the exact same position with Chandler Jones as the Chiefs are with Frank Clark. He has got a cap number of a little over $20 million this year. He is the highest paid player on that team this year. All the same boxes that Frank Clark checks, except Frank Clark wants to be here. Well, at least we think that. I don't know how bad you want to be in the league if you're just driving around in a truck with a machine gun in California.
Yep.
But whatever. All right, well then, Matt, as we are going into as everyone is arriving to camp now, give me your stance on the state of this defensive line. Is this the group that is a liability on this team in 2021?
I think when it comes to the defense, they're probably that position that we have to worry about the least. It's a good mix of young guys and veterans. I do think they go pretty deep on the defensive line. One thing I would worry about in the secondary, and we'll talk about this in the future, but there's no veterans in the secondary aside from Tyrann Mathieu. So the D-line, they do have those guys that I think can be depended on to at least be productive and do whatever their job is. So, yeah, I'm feeling good about the D-line.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because, as we've talked before, I do think that it is the group that can, and this goes for any team, whatever your philosophy is, this group can break the entire defense.
Right.
If it don't work, nothing works. So it will make that young secondary better. It will give a young secondary the time it needs. And I can say with 100% confidence, Bob Sutton would not be able to steer this thing.
Yeah.
And I am just so glad that Spags is here. I feel that he just can get the most out of damn near anybody. And to see the absolute night and day, and as you said, we will talk about this later on, but the production, no matter how it's gotten there from Daniel Sorensen, it's not just a coincidence that Spags is there. Spags very much has his hand on the pulse of Sorensen's trajectory.
Yep.
That has just been crazy to see. But yeah, we will definitely be touching on the secondary, getting closer to the season. Super pumped to see to see what happens in camp. Even though I'm hoping for just zero news. I want nothing.
Yep.
I want no breaking news out of training camp. Just tell me Noah Gray looks good. He's catching balls. He's running around in his shorts. Whatever. That I know they're going to pick someone. My money's on it's him.
100%.
All right. Well, then we'll get out of here. I think I'll just leave it where I'm just a little, I guess concerned. I guess not so much concerned, but it's just, we've got so much money getting paid to two guys on that defensive line, it's so top heavy that I'd almost like to see just four above average go getters on the line rather than, two guys, and one of which, everyone's down on right now. And he's the highest paid player on the team. So it's got a bad taste in my mouth that we were so excited for the possibility of cutting him.
Yeah.
And when you're excited about getting that money back, there's a reason for it. And it doesn't necessarily get talked enough. I get it. Frank Clark does a lot of the dirty work that doesn't show up on the stat page. Setting an edge is not easy to do in this league. The way he can get outside, he can stop the run. He does have a motor. You just like to see when you're getting, premier pass rusher money. I'd like to see you getting to the quarterback more than you are.
That makes sense.
The numbers that he was putting up in Seattle through a regular season, that's what we were hoping to see. Give me that 11 to 14 sacks a year, not 4 or 5 sacks a year. I just hope he comes to camp with a clear head and makes that clear right away. It's just there is no bullshit here. I'm here to play, and maybe being under this microscope will light him up a little bit. But that's all we got tonight. We will be back. We'll be talking more position groups leading up to through training camp and up to preseason. For Justin Herrera and Matt Bird, I'm Billy Truelove. This is Podcast 1558. We are out.